Broadcasting live from the Business Radio X studios in Atlanta, Georgia, it's time for Atlanta Business Radio, spotlighting the city's best businesses and the people who lead them.
Lee Cantor here with Stone Payton, another episode of Georgia State University's Entrepreneurship and Innovation Institute radio show. And Stone, this is going to be a fun one.
Hey, it is. It's the home stretch, though, man. We have had such a great time today. We've been broadcasting live from Georgia State University's ENI. I love coming down here. I know I mention it every time that we open up an episode, but it is just so much fun, so inspiring, so invigorating. I enjoy talking to the young entrepreneurs with dreams on their heart, and here at this facility, they seem to be as good as anyone at articulating those dreams, and I love visiting with the people who are guiding them and helping them get that path figured out. And first up, on the episode this afternoon, we are going to visit with one such person. He's a part-time instructor with the Entrepreneurship and Innovation Institute here at Georgia State University. Please join me in welcoming to the broadcast Mr. Matt Bramblett. Good afternoon, sir.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Well, Matt, tell us about your role here. You're an instructor?
I am completing my 9th consecutive semester. Teaching
personal
here.
Best.
That's my personal best. It's been a process of continually improving my performance. Right, we focus a lot on students, but I guess I can remember one of the reviews at the end of my first semester. I think one of the students said, "Hey, pretty good. You'll get better."
Nice,
something like that.
Tough love,
and
huh?
so and I've striven to make it better and more engaging each semester. If we're not doing the kind of methodology that we are teaching here in our own area, like ENI itself is a startup, and as an instructor, I have to continuously experiment and improve to see what connects with my students. But my focus in terms of students are the non-business students, which is interesting. I didn't really anticipate when I joined ENI that those would be the students that I would be working most with. But you've interviewed plenty of my colleagues here at ENI, so you know that the nexus of this organization was meant to infuse entrepreneurial thinking and instruction and methodology throughout the entire university. In other universities, sometimes entrepreneurship just really lives and stays in the business school, but that was not really the purpose here from the very, very outset. And one of the first programs that we offered was a certificate or a minor in entrepreneurship open to any major across the university. And since that time, we've assisted 2 of the other colleges, schools here, in creating Bachelor of Interdisciplinary degree programs in media entrepreneurship, which your other guest, Lexie, is a part of, and social entrepreneurship with the Andrew Young School. And I work only with students right now that are coming from those programs. They've not taken accounting classes. They've not taken marketing classes. In some cases, it is the first business class that they've ever taken, which makes it just a really rewarding, fascinating process.
Now, how do you feel about that? Do you see entrepreneurship as business, or do you see it kind of more interdisciplinary? Just philosophically. For me personally, I believe that entrepreneurship is like an artist. I think you're creating something from nothing. So if you don't have that kind of mindset of an artist, then it's more difficult.
Yeah, I think it's a creative process. I think the word may originate from French for adventurer or something like that. I think I've read, but it's always an adventure.
Not for accountant.
You can be an entrepreneur and be an accountant. We've certainly seen business institutions pop up that serve specific business needs in a better way than existed before. But I have a very broad viewpoint, a very broad definition of entrepreneurship, and some of this I've borrowed from other people along the way. But I think generally an entrepreneur is just someone who sees the world through a different lens. They see the world in terms of opportunities, of needs that could be filled, whether those be for profit or otherwise. And the second half of that is they have to be someone who's action oriented. You got to do something about it. You can't just sit around and talk about, hey, I got this great got this great idea, or we should solve, world hunger. You have to be bent toward action. And I think, given that broad definition, then entrepreneurship applies equally across business institutions, philanthropy, church, and state. We've seen entrepreneurial activities in all of those areas, even in our own town of Atlanta here. The cities of Sandy Springs and Johns Creek and South Fulton now are the results of entrepreneurial processes of seeing opportunity and then creating a new organization to meet that need. And we see that obviously with philanthropic efforts as well. And need I say more about churches? We see new churches springing up all over to meet the needs of their particular target market.
Now, when you're working with non-business students, what is kind of the mental shift that has to happen for them to really get the most out of the program?
I think the first thing I like to do with them is to show them that there's already a lot that they know and don't realize it. And the reason is, by the time they get to school in the morning, they've probably already done business with or traded with a half a dozen business institutions. And just getting them to think in terms of, hey, I was a customer of that company, whether it was the gas station or, the jump scooter or Uber or McDonald's when you pulled in the drive-thru to grab a biscuit, and thinking in terms of what's the business model for them? What does success look like for them? What might be issues in scaling that business and making it bigger and growing it? If we can get students to understand that because they're just living, right, and they're living in America where business is such a foundational institution for our economy, that they already know a lot about business, and to kind of start seeing their life through business goggles, so to speak. And that kind of helps solidify some of the things that we then teach in the class.
And that's an important point, because a lot of times people don't understand the business behind whatever the activity is. Like, that's where a lot of these privacy issues have happened with websites, that people didn't click that I'm getting all this free stuff from this website.
That's exactly right.
That maybe I'm the product. Like, they didn't realize that, right?
Yeah.
They thought that they're just like, wow, Google's so generous. I get email and I get to search and all this stuff, and they don't realize that they might be what the transaction, the currency there.
Well, there's nothing that's free ever. And, I was trained as an undergraduate to never even say the words free enterprise. As my professor said, nothing's free.
But it's a mental shift. They don't see it that way.
Yeah,
they thought
you have
Facebook
to understand.
was free.
Yeah, you
right?
look at that and say, okay, so how, and
how could it be free?
Yeah, we grew up in an era where, linear television was the main media. And we understood that, okay, well, television's free. Actually, television's still free today over the air, but it's not really free because you're paying with your attention, paying with your eyeballs. The younger generation has grown up with different technologies and different access to different medium. So they don't necessarily connect with it in the same way. But yeah, I think as they think about how they might create an entity to solve some problem, understanding that free can be a business model as long as there's some other party willing to be a part of.
At some point, money has to change hands somewhere.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. So we look at all different kinds of business models. Matter of fact, we cover that pretty extensively in terms of, well, a business model is just simply, well, how do you make money?
Right.
And it describes, you have to be able to articulate the value that you're bringing. And this is something that I see not only with my work with students, but with more experienced people that are going through, say, ATDC's Customer Discovery Program or at the farm. And that is the sometimes difficulty they have in articulating the problem that they're solving. And that is the beginning of any new institution. If you're not solving a problem, you're not going to get very far.
Right.
And when I say solving a problem, I mean, we talk about solving problems, but it could be providing a gain When you talk about new entertainment companies or gaming, are you solving a problem? Yeah, you're providing a gain that people want, but you're providing a gain, reducing a negative, or providing a product or service that gets a job done that somebody wants done.
Now, what's your backstory? Obviously, you didn't go to school to be a professor of entrepreneurism.
Well, how back do you want to go? I mean, I could go back as far as a gas can and a push more, but
So you were always an entrepreneur.
I think I always had a little bit of that leaning. Maybe that goes back to seeing my grandfather as a farmer, figure out every way he could to make money and feed his family. I think in college, a buddy of mine and I had a commercial cleaning company. And as I look back on it, we probably should have just kept going with that and scaled it up and turned it into the biggest cleaning company in Atlanta. But I guess I was tired of cleaning other people's toilets at 5 a.m. So I took a job in commercial banking. And it turned out to be a really good move for me because, I haven't really kept up with how banks are now bringing in young people into the back then they would put you through a very extensive management training program. Anything that you learned about finance in college, they're going to do it all over again, so that you have a really good understanding of how to analyze your business customers and then help fill their financing needs. And so every day, every week at the bank was a different kind of company that I'm working with. So I'm learning about different markets, different companies, different business models.
And you had to understand the financials of how they did business. So
exactly. How do you make money, right, and how do you pay back loans, more importantly, for the bank, right?
Exactly.
So that formed a very, very solid foundation for me in understanding not just the numbers, but the problems that companies face in scaling their business and growing, and the problems that family-owned businesses face when passing off to the next generation. There are just a variety of things that you're exposed to when you work in banking, and I found that it was very rewarding. But at some point, I just got to the point where I was like, okay, I need a new adventure. So I went back to Georgia Tech and did the MBA program there, and thought that I wanted to be an investment banker until I realized that, well, those guys work about 80 hours a week. So I had an opportunity to go to work for a startup company, which isn't really much better.
Right.
But at least it was an adventure.
But you get paid less. That's the advantage.
I actually got paid less, yeah. So at Georgia Tech, I was exposed to the Advanced Technology Development Center for the first time.
Which is one of the country's oldest incubators. It
is, I think, with Rensselaer, with RPI, probably the two oldest incubators in the country. And ATDC, of course, serves all of Georgia. It's not just for Georgia Tech, right? Yeah, they have divisions that serve that look inward at Georgia Tech, but ATDC serves all of the state's citizens. And so at that time, ATDC was playing matchmaker between serial entrepreneurs and researchers, academics that were doing cutting edge work. They still are. They kind of do that within the Venture Lab organization now. But I had an opportunity to go to work for some guys that had teamed up with a Georgia Tech professor, and they wanted to basically make it possible to stream video seamlessly and at high quality over lossy networks, the public internet, which really wasn't.
Before it was cool.
This was before Netflix. This was when Netflix was, sending DVDs around through the mail. And so I was hired very early, one of the first hires, and my job was basically to, hey, where are we going to go? Find us an early customer, find us the right market. And, timing is everything. And at that time, broadband was considered to be 200 kilobits per second to the home, and not very many people had it. So nobody was making money in streaming video. There were a lot of people making money in video, but it wasn't being streamed over open networks, and those were cable operators. Right. And so we did a lot of the things that today would be called customer discovery, but didn't exist before, Steve Blank came out with, 4 Steps to the Epiphany. So we were able to find in pretty short order that there was a need in the cable television space for a new kind of video encoder, and it enabled cable operators to convert their networks to all digital. It was the first software-based encoder that was introduced to that market. So That was a great experience. It had all kinds of ups and downs. We raised venture capital. We went on half pay sometimes. It was just, it was one of those things where some days you're like, why did I do this? And other days you're like, I can't believe I've ever done anything with this. Right. Yeah. And I think the combination of those experiences has, working for the bank, doing some small ventures on my own, and then working for sort of a growth company, kind of have given me like a package of experience that I think I can bring to the classroom and help students connect a little bit better with the material.
And what's your most rewarding part of doing this kind of work with the students?
Well, I think when students come up to me at the end of the class, at the end of the semester, and tell me that they got something valuable, that's rewarding. Of course, I want to stay in touch with these students and see them succeed. That's really what they want to do. Sometimes that's going to take a few years out before they're on their feet, but it's that's the rewarding thing, is to see that they're connecting with the material. They're getting a passion for business, which I don't know if y'all can tell, I have a little bit of that. Hopefully that's contagious with them, and they understand that business is kind of taking it on the chin a little bit these days, right? Greedy Wall Street and all of that stuff, but if you think of it, there's no evil institutions, right? There's people that that do bad, but the business institutions are just so critical to our country. You can't retire without them. 80% of us are going to work for them, right? And the businesses don't exist to create jobs, but we do as a byproduct of pursuing profitable revenue. So businesses are good, and that's kind of
well, you're preaching to the choir here.
I want to get that message across to students.
That's what we do every day. Now, for you, do you have any advice for that student entrepreneur?
Well, I have advice for students. I'm kind of a combination of a teacher, of a dad, and I too have skin in the game here at Georgia State. I have a son who's a sophomore here, and I hope people are being hard on him. But my advice is both personal and for their journey as entrepreneurs. But the personal advice is that you have to define what success means to you in your own terms. You can't base your idea of success on somebody else's idea. You're just going to be, pursuing the wrong goals. And we see in the news that, well, this startup company did this, that, or the other, and that's what I should go for. If you want to have a gift shop on Main Street, USA, go open up a gift shop on Main Street, USA. You are no less an entrepreneur than Zuckerberg. Right. And if you're led into the ministry and you want to open up a new kind of church, you're no less an entrepreneur than Zuckerberg. The other thing I would say is that in terms of your career, and a lot of our students are going to go to work for somebody else first. They're not going to just start businesses right out of school. That's the reality of it. And when you take that first job, the energy, the attitude, the professionalism, and the work ethic that you take into that first job is going to set you on the trajectory in your career. It's not to say that you can't recover from a first bad experience, but those things are all within your control as a young person. Mm-hmm. So, take control of them and make sure that you make yourself very valuable to that first employer. And the last thing is this is the time in your life to get control of your spending habits. People look at me like, what are you talking to students? Well, this is so there's the Global Entrepreneurship Monitor. That's a joint venture, I guess, between Babson and the London Business School. And they study global entrepreneurial activity. And some statistics that they've put forth about U.S. businesses is, on average, it takes about $65,000 to start a business. Now, that's average. Averages can be misleading. Your business might require less. But the other stat is that 65% of that is coming from the founders. You can't start a business if you've not saved anything. So even if you're struggling as a student, you've got to figure out a way to live within your means. And you can't go chasing everything that everybody has, because you'll never have any money. And income and wealth are two different things. And those are topics that we cover in the class. And actually, they're things that students really just eat up. They're interested in investing. They're interested in learning about the stock market. And we try to cover a little bit of that so that they're a little more well-rounded when they're coming out. They're just not talking about credits and debits and cash flow.
Well, if you can teach them about compounding, they're going to be ahead of the game.
First day of class.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your story.
It's been my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Well, and I want to say thank you for your service. And I know that phrase is most often associated with military service, and I don't want to diminish that at all, but I am quite sincere when I say thank you for your service, because the kind of impact that you're having, we can't measure the kind of impact that someone like you is having on our culture, on our country, on our economic system, because of what you're in there doing every day to influence these young people who are coming through this system. So I'm quite sincere when I say that. I will also echo a couple of things that you mentioned. I did not get that messaging quite as early as some of the people at this table are getting it, and some of your students, but I was very fortunate that pretty darn early in my career, a very early mentor for me did counsel me in both of those areas. And I got to tell you guys, if you can not go into debt, it's a level of freedom that apparently not a lot of people get to experience. And freedom being such an important value to me, it's meant everything in the world to me. So thank you for that part of your service too, for sharing that message.
Thank you.
Yeah. Hey, stay with us. We're going to visit with some other folks.
I'm here.
All right. Next up on this episode of GSU ENI Radio, we have with us media entrepreneurship student and soon to be colleague at Business Radio X. Man, we got to get her over there over at our shop. Please join me in welcoming to the show, Miss Lexie Newhouse. How are you?
Doing good. Thank you so much.
So I know you've been exposed. It must be so much fun to just be living in this environment. I mean, it's going to sound hokey, but just the vibrations in these halls has got to be incredible. And what did you pick up, if anything, new, different, invigorating from the last 5 or 10 minutes there?
Right. I mean, having Professor Bramblett in class my sophomore year, it was my first business class. So I think just learning those business skills and learning how to market yourself. I was actually an entrepreneur and didn't even know it. At the time, I was doing contract media work, and really I just viewed it as fun projects. But, he began realizing that you're marketing towards a specific audience, you're selling it. So just learning those business skills overall was beyond helpful.
Now, what drew you to the media entrepreneurship program?
Right. So I went to Wheeler High School, which was the first STEM certified high school magnet program in the state, and now STEAM certified with arts. So I focused on genetics, and I did ELISA testing there in the genetics department. And so kind of a complete turn coming into more creative sphere. But one of the reasons that this interdisciplinary program attracted me so much was that I didn't have to compromise between being a creative and a researcher. I mean, really, entrepreneurship is leveraging that creativity, that problem solving with research. So you know who your market is, how you're selling it.
So now what is your dream? What are you going to use the degree for? Because you're getting close to, not at the very end, but close to the end.
Yeah, we're getting there, approaching senior year. But I think whatever I do, I'm going to be making the title for it. It's going to be a new opportunity that I'm not even aware of. Qazi and I, which you'll hear from in a little bit, we're currently working on a venture. So I definitely see myself in the startup space moving forward after graduation.
Do you hear in her voice, though? And this is another thing that I think people like you, Professor, help cultivate it in people. The comfort level that this young lady has with ambiguity. She has. I feel like it is informed optimism. I don't think it's naivete. I really don't. But there's a certain degree of comfort that you have around ambiguity and not having all the answers that I don't know that many of your peers do. Do you guys see that? Do you see that, Lee?
Yeah, I think that right now, especially they've grown up at a time where technology changes so rapidly, it's hard to even know what's going to happen next. And for Lexie, you've got to experience a lot of these new technologies. You want to talk about some of the work that you're doing with augmented reality and some of the newer kind of fun little toys that are out there?
Of course. So in high school, I did video production. So that was, some animation, post-production, editing, things like that. So now coming into this space and seeing all these advanced technologies that are emerging, it's quite a leap. Mm-hmm. So I'm now in the augmented reality space. Why
don't you educate the people who aren't familiar what augmented reality is as compared to like virtual reality?
Sure. So with virtual reality, you have to put on a headset to actually like visualize the images that you're seeing. Versus augmented reality, you can just use your smartphone and open up the camera. And then when you scan a certain device, there'll be targets within that. For example, if you put targets on a book and you scan the cover of a book, an image, a 3D object will appear. So you don't necessarily have to buy additional technologies to use augmented reality, which makes it, much more affordable and accessible as a technology.
And then there's lots of creativity around it right now. A lot of, like I've seen, where you can place a character in, like we could have we're around a table right now and we could put a celebrity at the head of the table waving and dancing. And then if you watched a video of that, it would look like the person was in the room with us.
Correct. Yeah. And I think it's going to become more interactive. So you can start asking questions and they can interact back versus just having them there and acting out.
Right. So you're seeing kind of the edges of this right now.
Correct.
Now, what's it like when you're taking a class, or I'm assuming you're taking some class or seeing this in action? How is that being kind of taught to you?
So I actually learned how to code augmented reality by myself. And I think that's a trend that we're seeing with a lot of, especially the media entrepreneurship students, is they give us the facility, and the mentorship that we need. But ultimately, if we want to create it, we're going to go out there
and create it.
And
then are you collaborating with other students and professors? How does that work?
Right. So Qazi is a co-founder. So he leverages his business background with that, and I'm more so the creative side. And then as well as our wonderful E&I professors, they'll stay till late, mentorship us. I mean, there's been times.
So what's your startup?
So it's called Paper. It's an augmented reality platform that's bringing books off the page into the real world. So we're seeing that students that are transitioning from picture books to full-on novels, their overall levels of reading comprehension are decreasing.
So it's for younger?
Right. So it's around 3rd to 5th grade. It really depends on the school. But we see that their level of comprehension decreases with the lack of visual aids.
And then what is your solution?
So it'd be augmented reality. So a student can open up their smartphone, their camera, scan the cover of a book or the end of a chapter, and that'll unlock a 3D augmented reality character that can ask them questions about the material they just read. So they have that interactive component to it.
And what stage are you at right now with this?
So we currently have a 2D model working. The book that we are focusing on is Percy Jackson, a pretty, familiar title. But moving forward, we're looking to bring that 2D model into a 3D model and then make that interactive so they can ask questions.
So now, did you go through the whole kind of buyer's journey? Like how far along, like are you using the blank canvas? Like what did you do to kind of validate the concept?
Right. So the idea came out of Startup Weekend, which is a 54-hour startup competition where you pitch ideas and you start from scratch and then you build this. So we conducted customer discovery throughout the weekend. I had a contact at Scholastic, so we pitched the idea to her, got some feedback, and she kind of validated that for us.
And then what about, did you put it in the hands of kids, or it's too preliminary to let an actual consumer use it?
Right. So we're still in the research stage. So we also conducted a survey with 40 educators to see what problems they're experiencing in the classroom. So that's been another point of focus for us.
And then what about a kind of the buyer? Is it the buyer of the book company? Like Scholastic would be the buyer of this?
Right. So we have a few revenue models, but the primary one would be the children's books publishing companies.
And then what you're doing, the actual coding part?
Yeah. So at the moment,
so you're learning. That's why it's 2D right now?
Exactly. Yeah. It's a work in progress.
So you need more learning to get to 3D.
Exactly.
So now going through this process, what has been the funnest part for you?
I think just the fact, like, I never could have imagined I could have coded an augmented reality app, like, at all. I mean, I had no coding experience going into this. So I think just moving forward, you can't tell yourself you can't do it until you do it. So.
Well, you had a problem to solve, and who else was going to do it?
Exactly.
And then so you had to do it. Now, are you going to do more pitch contests? What are you going to do?
Yeah, so a few weeks ago, I participated in the Wiser's Big Ideas for a Bright Future pitch competition, and I took home first place, which was fantastic. So thank you again.
For this concept?
Yes, with this concept. Yep. And I've participated in a few other pitch competitions in the past with other ideas. So don't be discouraged if you don't win your first pitch competition, because it's a long way coming. But that's been the most recent.
How does E&I help you with pitch competitions? Are there people here to hear your pitch and give you advice, or are you kind of alone on this?
No. They bring in the entire office. We pull it up on the big screen. They provide feedback. I mean, there's been times the sun has gone down and we were here late, after the fact, the day before a pitch competition.
Wow.
And they've been helping.
So now you've really gotten a lot out of this E&I program. But in high school, were you aiming at an E&I program, or this was just kind of an accidental thing and now you're kind of all in?
Right. So I came in with the media entrepreneurship major thinking that I was exclusively going to focus on the media part. I was like, I'm going to take Professor Bramblett's class. I'll be done with business.
Get this out of the way.
Right. I'll be good. And here we are, like, complete turn on its head. Now I'm taking majority E&I and business classes, and then learning this creative stuff on the side.
All right. So one of the things that they learn as they go through this process is to get help, right? So tell us about your colleague. Introduce your colleague. Let's get some input from him. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So Qazi is a co-founder. We worked together at E&I, and we had no idea that this idea was going to come along, and it worked out perfectly because I could provide the creative insight that we needed, but he has so much business experience that could lend more to the financial side, the accounting side. So we just ended up becoming a very strong team, and we're excited to carry this through.
All right. So who found who, or did Professor Bramblett make this match, or how did that come to be?
So, the idea, as we said, stemmed from the Startup Weekend event. Being involved with the E&I and, being just very entrepreneurial in nature, we decided to take this opportunity and go there. So I went there and I pitched this concept of creating a platform where children could see the visual aids come to life while they're reading. And I had to go and poach her because she was trying to go to another team. That would have been a bad move, Lexie, but I'm glad you stuck around. It worked out. And so we had 3 other members during that competition, and we worked alongside them and created this whole idea, the business model, and the MVP as well.
So now when you're doing something entrepreneurial like this, tell me about kind of your background and family. Are they entrepreneurs? Are they kind of supportive of your
Yeah, absolutely. Work? So I was born and raised in Bangladesh, and I moved here around 3 years ago now. And I grew up in the family of entrepreneurs, my grandparents, my parents as well.
So they're in the augmented reality business?
No, not yet. I'll convince them someday. But, my grandfather was in construction. My father was in, food. My mom's a designer, has her own little boutique store. And my first experience with entrepreneurship was in the 7th grade. I was in high school then, and there was a huge trend with wristbands. So I knew someone who had contacts to a factory in China. So I thought, let's leverage this. I asked him if he could print out some wristbands for me. And he said yes. So I went to my classmates and said, hey, I have this cool design. I'm going to give it to you in 2 weeks. Just give me money in advance. So
I love it. Right. That's good. That's
pay up front, man. That's good.
And it said, what would Qazi do on there?
No. It was just the name of our class, just a celebrity thing. But they gave me the money. Unfortunately, that didn't pan out because the prints were wrong. And that had to deal with the whole thing. I had all this inventory, but no one to sell it to because the prints were incorrect.
So that was spelled wrong?
It was spelled wrong, yeah. So no one bought it, and I probably still have 500 wristbands sitting in my drawer somewhere. But that was my first failure. And I used that experience in 11th grade. We had the first prom in our high school, and prom was a foreign concept in the whole country. So I thought, there's a gap in the market.
Yeah, that
But-
would be cool if they had a misspelled name. That would be a cool, trendy thing that everybody should have.
Absolutely. So I thought, you know what? No one's selling corsages or boutonnieres because that doesn't exist in this country. So I leveraged my resources. My mom.
So how did you know that was a thing? So you had done research on American proms?
Yeah. So, I was looking, what suit, wear, what color to wear. So, these are such cool flower ornaments. I should do this. So I asked my mom, and she's a creative. So she designed the corsages and boutonnieres. And I sold that. And I think in 2 days, I made $500. And in Bangladeshi currency, that is a lot of money for a high school student. Wow. And since then, I've just tried to figure out ways I can feed this bug. And that's how.
So how'd you find Georgia State?
So my uncle and aunt live in Georgia, and I immigrated here 3 years ago. And one of my uncles actually went to Georgia State for his master's in computer information systems, and he told me how amazing the business school was, and the time that he had here, and that's why I'm here.
So now, how has it been for you?
It's been amazing. I've tried to be as involved as I possibly can, humanly can, and Georgia State's so unique because there are so many different types of people here from different backgrounds, and just having the ability to interact with them, hearing their stories, that's changed my perspective. It's opened me up to various new thought processes that I could have never imagined.
Now, what about kind of how you imagined America and going to college? Is it how you imagine?
It's very different, I would say. The only idea I had of America was from Friends, just American television.
From the TV show Friends, not your friends.
No. It's been a very interesting experience, to say the least.
So now, but has it matched it? Has it been less than or more than?
I think it's been more than, especially at Georgia State University, more than I could ever expected.
What about from your own friend standpoint? How's your circle of friends like here?
Yeah, my friends love it here as well. My friends from high school, they all went to different states around the U.S. So I have friends
from Bangladesh, they all came to America?
Yes. Majority of them came to America. So I have friends studying in New York, L.A.,
Right. So you
Chicago.
compare notes?
Yeah. When they come to Georgia State to visit Atlanta, they love it here, and because no one's ever heard of Atlanta back there.
Really?
It's not one of those famous cities, but once they come visit,
we had an Olympics here.
Yeah. No, they fall in love just as I did.
So now, how do you see your future panning out?
Well, after graduation, I want to...
After you sell millions of paper, how do you pronounce it?
Paper. Yeah, it's a play on the
paper.
Yeah,
I got it.
Well, personally, I would like to pursue a career in consulting initially. As Professor Bramblett said, his corporate America experience in banking really allowed him to see various companies and understanding their business models. So I believe that going to consulting will give me that same opportunity to see how different corporations function, companies functions, and then I can use those ideas and work on.
Okay, now let's play out this scenario. You keep entering these startup contests, and then you win one of these. You win the $100,000.
Yep.
And they go, okay, commercialize this.
Yeah.
So now, what, are you still going to be a consultant? What are you going to do?
No. If timing is key, and if we see the opportunity, I'm definitely going to give it my all.
What if one of you sees the opportunity, and the other one wants to get a real job?
No. I think we'll both pursue this.
And we're all holding multiple jobs and projects at the same time. So if anything, it could be a side hustle. Yeah.
Yeah.
So how do you manage that? This is for both of you. You got a bunch of ventures going. Paper is one of them. So were you just throwing stuff against the wall and whatever sticks, that's what you're going to follow through with? Or you can't keep them all the balls in the air, right?
Yeah. I mean, I can say I have a wall just covered in sticky notes of ideas.
Right.
So
ideas are cheap. It's execution that's costly.
But because we're so involved with the E&I here and the professors, we speak to them, see what their take is on, and we go to other mentors as well. And based on the interaction, the feedback we get, we see, the idea is great, or it's not, and we just do an elimination process.
So now I'm going to bring Matt back in this. Now tell me about how this mindset of an entrepreneur is going to help and serve them no matter what they decide to do.
Well, this is a skill that corporate America is trying to figure out. For our largest, most well-established companies, they're trying to figure out how they can continue to think entrepreneurially to stay
right. This
in
is
a
like
dominant position.
It's
so
one
they
of
need
those
people
soft
like
skills, that has a lot of practical use.
It is, and a lot of people believe that entrepreneurs are born that way, and there are some traits I think that we see that that entrepreneurs have in common, but I don't think there's any particular kind of person that you say is an entrepreneur. You certainly say lazy. I guess we can eliminate that one, right?
Right. Well, they take action.
Yeah, they take
It's
action.
not just dreamers.
Yeah,
just
so
hoping
it's a way of looking at the world. If you're in a Fortune 500 company, you're in a role where whether you know it or not, you're seeing opportunities every day. You're seeing problems that haven't gotten solved yet, and whether the company's looking for someone who can solve problems internally or get them into new markets, this kind of thinking and the methodology behind it. And that's the thing I think that we're focused on here, is that this methodology can be taught, it can be learned, and it can be replicated over and over again. And that's the kind of skills that companies are looking for.
Now, Lexie, you've been involved in a lot of different startup activities here in the city. Any favorites for you?
Oh, there's a lot of really great things going on. So currently I'm interning with Invest Atlanta in their Innovation and Entrepreneurship department. And they're running the Students to Startups program. So they're placing students at startups across Atlanta, fueling that tech pipeline to keep people in Atlanta and grow that ecosystem. So that's a great program. The Women's Entrepreneurship Initiative is another great one. Love Thai Atlanta. There's a lot of really great things going on down here. Now,
what about kind of the pipeline to Silicon Valley?
Right. So I'm really excited because through the Panthers in the Valley program, through the Robinson College of Business, 14 students will be going to Silicon Valley in October, and I'm fortunate enough to be one of them. So hopefully being there, face to face with the startups, seeing what Silicon Valley is doing with their ecosystem, and what
how long are you going to spend there?
I believe it's about 5 days.
Wow, That's a great opportunity. So now, looking at Georgia State's entrepreneurship program, how would you pitch it to maybe high school kids or people that are considering different college opportunities?
Right. So I think a lot of it is the ecosystem and what opportunities are available. So, at E&I, we were funded to go to Startup Weekend, different competitions. They have the mentorship. Then, of course, we have other resources like Launch GSU, XLab. So I think what really makes Georgia State stand out is that all of the resources are here. You just have to be a go-getter and actually take advantage of them. And so that's something I try to stress with high school students, is that you do have to take advantage of them.
Right. They're not going to do it for you.
Right.
You got to want it. You got to go out and kind of be involved. Mm-hmm. And if you do that, good things can happen, right?
Exactly.
Just to add to Lexie's points, Georgia State definitely has countless resources, but the students aren't necessarily aware of them or don't take advantage of them. We've been lucky enough to, take advantage of every opportunity that's
right. But is it luck? You're proactively doing the work. It's not
Absolutely.
Like you're sitting by the phone waiting for it to ring and hope they go, "Hey, here's a great opportunity. You should do this."
They're making their own luck.
That's right. And that's what it takes. And that's what I think makes Georgia State unique in the university. You have a lot of people that take advantage of this stuff. Their grinders are out there battling every day. And a lot of first-generation students here that have to kind of work a little harder because they don't have the support and role models that some of the other students have at different colleges. So good for you. It isn't luck. So now what's next? What do you guys need for if to make paper a reality instead of an augmented reality? What do you need?
Well, we really do need to bolster our tech team. So getting a proper CTO would be the next step because, we can take care of the business side, the creative side, but we need the technology side.
So you need somebody that can code in 3D.
Yeah.
That's it.
I thought they were going to throw out a number for you.
How are you going about finding that person?
Here is a great place to look. We just have to go next door to the creative media. Exactly.
Just put a little poster up.
Exactly.
So now you think the person could be here?
Oh, easily. Georgia State has a very strong talent pool, so we just have to leverage that.
Good stuff. Well, thank you all for sharing your story today. Is there any coordinates for you if somebody wanted to connect? Any LinkedIn, website, anything you guys have?
Yeah, I think definitely connecting to us on LinkedIn would be great. So Qazi Huck, QAZIHAQ,
and Lexie Newhouse, LEXIE, Newhouse, NEWHOUSE.
Good stuff. What about you, Matt? You're on the down low.
Well, just here, mbramblett at gsu.edu or just mattbramblett at gmail.com.
All right. Well, thank you all for sharing your story today.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right, this is Lee Cantor for Stone Payton. We'll see you all next time on GSU's Entrepreneurship and Innovation Institute radio show.
Nicely done, gang. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Y'all made what could have been intimidating. Yeah. I appreciate it.